What you see here is a Fasco Parlour Fan. 4 blades, 38 inches, walnut brown finish. This is an older parlor fan with the flat switch cap and cardboard box variable speed control. Fasco, like many other stack motor fan companies, in their earliest days used a cardboard box variable speed control system to regulate speed in their fans, and then later switched over to a slumber quiet-like system with a potentiometer, resistors, a heatsink, and all that. Casablanca really paved the way with slumber quiet. Despite how faulty it was, many other companies tried to copy its design. So, despite this fan not being a quote-unquote SQ-like very low parlor fan, the pull chain sequence and outward presentation, despite a few aesthetic differences, is overly the same. The first pull is high, the second pull is the variable setting, and then the third pull is off again. Also, I'm not sure whether this system would have been referred to as very low at the time, or if Fasco didn't coin that term until they came out with their SQ-like system. But either way, it's very similar, so I'll still be referring to it as very low here. The switch cap has a Fasco logo on it, which is a little hard to make out because the finish is textured, but it is still there. And aside from that, the other aesthetic difference is the knob piece on the control, which on this fan is much fatter. For reference, over here is a parlor fan with SQ-like very low, where you can see the knob piece is much skinnier. And then there's the more noticeable difference, the switch cap, which is more ornate and attaches via a nipple in the middle, as opposed to 2 screws on either end. The blade finish is, I believe, burnished walnut, and the blade badges are rather scratched up. It's my own fault, really. Pretty mad at myself for it, but oh well, live and learn. And aside from the scratched up badges and some paint missing on the downrod, the fan is in very good cosmetic condition. Anyways, now we'll go ahead and ignite power. Starting off as slow as the fan can go on the variable setting. The minimum speed is nice and aesthetic, quite a ways slower than most SQ-like parlor fans that I've seen, which is nice. Turn it up a bit. And this is where the 60 cycle hum starts to make its presence known. This ceiling fan came off of Facebook Marketplace back in June of 2022, so quite a while ago. The reason I was not able to install it and run it until fairly recently is because I was not really able to figure out its wiring setup. And what I mean by that is it had 4 wires coming out of the top of the fan. A regular hot and neutral, and then also a red wire and a blue wire. Fasco had a very weird setup for wall controls where they would run extra wires and, as a result of that, also extra conduit through ceilings in order to make their wall controls compatible with the fans. Essentially what they were doing was externalizing a part of the fan's electronics to the wall control, which is a very strange way of doing it, and I can only imagine how frustrating it was for contractors back in the early 80s. Turn it up some more. So this was one of those fans, so for the longest time I didn't know how to properly hook it up, but thankfully just recently I got a hold of another cardboard box variable speed parlor fan, and I was able to look at that one for reference, so I was able to slightly rewire this fan to run as intended. And now I was finally able to put it up, which I'm very excited about, as Walnut Brown parlor fans are always cool to see. I had to travel quite a significant distance for this fan, I remember. And something else was pointed out to me upon interacting with the seller for this fan that was a bit of a hole in my system, you could say. Apparently, on my Facebook profile, my general location of where I lived was public for anybody to see. And after getting this fan, I changed that because the seller pointed out that I lived several hours away and asked if I actually lived that far away. And I said no, I just recently moved to the area and I used to live there. And then she said, oh, okay, because for a minute it made me wonder if perhaps this fan is really rare and valuable and that's why you came all this way and I could sell this thing for a lot of money. And then I just put on a poker face and said, yeah, what a lark. As the comment was so specific, it almost made me wonder as if someone had tipped her off to the fan's rarity, but she had already committed to selling to me and wasn't going to falter from that. And of course she would have no way of knowing that I was a collector because I didn't mention it in any capacity. So, kind of a funny story. And of course, following that, I did remove my location from Facebook, or I either made it so you can only see it if you're Facebook friends with me, something like that. Facebook is a weird website, but it's a great marketplace for fans, so I still use it. Anyways, so we're approaching a medium-high speed here now. And the fan has a little bit of wobble to it, but overall it's pretty well balanced. It also has a teensy bit of dry bearing noise, but The 60 cycle hum almost entirely overpowers that noise. One observation I have realized about parlor fans is that even though they do have uncommon finishes, such as Walnut Brown, and they are pretty desirable among a lot of people, if I'm being honest, Walnut Brown parlor fans, to the scale of how common parlor fans overall are not all that rare. They're certainly uncommon, but in the grand scheme of things, they are not that rare when you look at how often parlor fans pop up in general. Especially when you compare it to, say, how often a traditional brown Zephyr pops up compared to a Zephyr of any finish popping up. Bit of an interesting observation, but of course people still like their browns, so what are you going to do? Though it's definitely a good thing that these are more common. I certainly like it. Anyways, that's full speed on the variable setting there. And I'll switch it over to high on the pull chain in a moment, but I don't think it's going to get much faster. Overall, it's a very good fan. Not the fastest I've ever seen, but it's blowing good air and has a nice look to it. And there you have it, a 38-inch Fasco Parlour Fan in Walnut Brown.